I joined Aakash in 9th standard. So I joined early. I gave ANTHE in 8th standard. Pretty much a game-changing moment for me. Now I'm competing all across India.
Hello, and welcome to today's session. The class has started, Sangeeta. Hello, how are you doing? Hi, Divyanshi. Hi, Somesh. Hi, Siri. Good evening. Hi, Urmila. Hi, Angel. Yash, Shivanshu, Adarsh. Nice to see you all here today. Nandini, Lakshmi. Hello. कुछ लोगों की मॉर्निंग चल रही है अभी इस टाइम पे मॉर्निंग यश सरस्वती जया all right, so we have quite a bit to cover today, so let's get right to it. Yes, Nikita, good evening with so many exclamation marks. Today is your one-shot literature session. We will be going through the chapters in both your textbooks. So I'm working under the assumption that you have read the chapters. But even if there is maybe one odd chapter that you still haven't prepared, that's okay. You go through the summary, you go through the questions with us today. And then when you go back and read the chapter, you will have a better understanding of it. All right? Okay, so let's get right to it. Here's our first textbook, first flight. We're going to go through the chapters in this, and the first chapter is a letter to God. Okay, so let's quickly go over what we remember from this lesson. Come on. In the comments, I want to hear it or read it because I can't hear you. हाँ तो क्या होता है letter to God में? What happens? What are the events that take place in this chapter? What does Lencho do? What happens to Lencho? How does he deal with this situation? And how is the postmaster important in this chapter? So very quickly, yes, as Adarsh has pointed out, Lencho writes a letter to God. Why does he write a letter to God? Because all his crops are destroyed in the hailstorm and he needs money to again sow his field. For that money, he writes to God because he has unwavering faith in God. He knows for a fact that God will provide for him. But does the letter in reality reach God? No, it does not reach God. It reaches the postmaster who, upon reading the letter, doesn't want Lencho to lose faith in God. He finds it both amusing and kind of heartwarming, and he really wants to help Lencho out of the goodness of his heart and his goodwill. He collects money and also gives a part of his own salary. But are they able to collect enough money? Are they able to collect the 100 pesos that Lencho wanted? No, they're only able to collect 70 pesos. Aditi, get the currency correct, okay? So that is also quite a bit of money. So the postmaster himself delivers the letter with the money in it. And what happens, ironically, unexpectedly, Lencho is not even surprised that the money came. So much faith he had in God. But says that the people at the post office are a bunch of crooks, which is his way of blaming the people who work at the post office for stealing his money. That's the long and short of it. ठीक है? तो लेंचो को पैसे चाहिए थे. लेंचो का भगवान में बहुत विश्वास था. लेंचो ने भगवान को लेटर लिखी. पोस्टमास्टर ने लेटर पढ़ी. पोस्टमास्टर अच्छा इंसान था. उसने लेंचो की हेल्प करने की सोची. आधे से ज़्यादा पैसे कलेक्ट करके लेंचो को दिए और लेंचो को लगा कि भगवान ने तो पूरे पैसे भेजे होंगे, पर ये जो पोस्ट ऑफिस में काम करते हैं वो चोर है, उन्होंने पैसे चुरा लिए. All right? That's the long and short of it. So here's one of the sentences from your chapter. A plague of locusts would have left more than this. The hail has left nothing. This year we will have no corn. So this is the problem statement of the story. The fact that there is no corn. the source of income for the family is gone and they are in desperate need of money, and Lencho looks towards God because he has faith in God. Now here's our first question. Who does Lencho have complete faith in? Which sentences in the story tell you this? तो ये तो question complicated ही नहीं है, ठीक है? Because इसमें हम लोग I said it like 5 times. Lencho had complete faith in God. So first part of the question answered by saying he had complete faith in God. Which sentences? ये आपके ऊपर है. बहुत सारे sentences हैं in the story to indicate this. You can choose whichever sentence you want. Okay, one, for example, you can say कि जब Lencho was not at all surprised on seeing the money, that is an indication that he had complete faith in God. The fact that he decided to write a letter to God in itself, उस area से कोई भी sentence उठा लो, that is indication that he had complete faith in God. ठीक है? So there are many parts in the story where you will get to know that Lencho had complete faith in God. So you go back to the chapter, कोई भी sentence उठा के लिख लो. All right? Okay, now the second question is, why does the postmaster send money to Lencho? Why does he sign the letter God? ठीक है, also simple answer. Postmaster obviously knew कि the letter is not going to reach God. Okay, the letter reached him, and out of the goodness of his heart, he decided to help Lencho out. And he signed it God because he did not want Lencho to know that he is the one who is helping him out. He wanted to keep his faith intact. He did not want to break his faith in God. Okay? किसके भाई हो आप? आपका भाई? Okay. So, yeah. That's the answer for the second part. Simple. Alright. So, remember, whenever there are 2 parts to a question, you need to answer both parts. Don't just answer one. Okay. Alright. Now, did Lencho try to find out who had sent the money to him? Why or why not? Obviously, आंसर इसका obvious है. लेंचो को बिल्कुल भी डाउट नहीं हुआ था कि किसी और ने पैसे, भगवान ने नहीं, किसी और ने पैसे भेजे हैं, राइट? तो पहले पार्ट का आंसर क्या होगा? लेंचो did not try to find out who had sent the money to him because he was 100% convinced that God only had sent the money to him. है ना? So, why or why not? Now, because we have said that Lencho did not try to find out, how we justify that answer is, again I've already told you, is because he expected God to help him. उसको Lencho को कोई doubt था ही नहीं. He expected God to help him. Okay? Now, who does Lencho think has taken the rest of the money? What is the irony in this situation? Now, irony is whenever you have an unexpected outcome. Okay, you are expecting something and then उसका एकदम उल्टा हो जाता है. That's irony. And all of you, yes, try to give the answer and answer both parts of the question. So I see the first part of the question answered. Lencho thinks the post office employees have taken the money, correct? And what is the irony in this situation? इस बात में unexpected चीज क्या है? Yes, that he called the people who helped him out a bunch of crooks. So the very people who helped Lencho doubted. Correct? That's the irony. So first you need to know, to answer this question, you need to know what irony is. I told you irony is a situation that is strange or amusing or even sometimes, funny, because the opposite of what is expected happens. Alright, and in this case, Lencho thinks that the post office employees have taken the rest of the money, and the irony is that it was the post office employees only who went out of their way to collect money for Lencho. ठीक है? Alright. Good evening, Yashad. Nice to see you here. Okay. Now, are there people like Lencho in the real world? What kind of a person would you say he is? Now, this is a very subjective question, example of a subjective question. That means कि इसमें मेरा आंसर अलग हो सकता है, कशिश का अलग हो सकता है, रेनू का अलग हो सकता है. Everybody can have different answers. Okay? So, you have to just justify the point of view that you are expressing. So, you need to be able to clearly express what you feel, and that will get you the marks. So, are there people like Lencho in the real world? What kind of a person would you say he is? So, the personality traits that we know about Lencho is that he has complete unwavering faith in God. Okay, he's a person with a firm faith in God. Are there people like that in the world? Yeah, there are people like that in the world. Okay, so he's a very devout man who keeps thinking that God will come to his rescue. And you might even say that sometimes he's blind to reality. The fact that he doesn't question at all that why is God sending him money, you might think that he's maybe too naive. Okay, बहुत भोला इंसान हो सकता है वो. So whatever you think are the personality traits of Lencho, you mention those and then you say that yeah, these kind of people do exist in the world. Or you can say कि नहीं, ऐसा तो कोई भी नहीं होता दुनिया में, right? इतना तो कोई भी नहीं सोचता. People think that God helps in other ways. For example, if you ask God for help, maybe God will help you through somebody, but directly ऐसे help करना is nobody thinks that is possible. ठीक है? So whatever side you take, whatever point of view you have, you can justify it. ठीक है? Like Sana is saying, no, there aren't people like this in the world, because he would be naive, or stupid is a little harsh word to use, but like he would be naive and way too innocent to believe that God is directly helping him out like this. Okay? नाइव मतलब राजन बहुत ही बोला जो कुछ भी मान लेता है. आप उसको कुछ भी बोलो वो कुछ भी मान लेगा. ठीक है? Okay. Now, there are two kinds of conflict in the story between humans and nature and between humans themselves. How are these conflicts illustrated? So the first conflict between human and nature can be seen when Lencho's crops are destroyed, because Lencho is such a hard-working farmer. He worked very hard, he gave it his best, and yet the forces of nature destroyed his crops. So that is the first conflict that we see. The second conflict between humans themselves, the fact that Lencho not for a second thought that maybe some human read his letter and decided to help him out, instead blamed those very humans who helped him and accused them of stealing his money. So this is the second conflict. So human and nature is when crops get destroyed because of a hailstorm, and humans themselves is when Lencho blames those very people who helped him out and accuses them of stealing his money. ठीक है? All right, easy peasy. We've covered the first chapter. Now let's quickly go to the second one, Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. Again, a quick context for this chapter. This is an extract from Nelson Mandela's autobiography, and a lot of it is to do with the speech he gave when he was elected the first black president of South Africa, which was a very, very historic moment in the world. South Africa had a system in place called apartheid, which you should know, which was racial discrimination and segregation against non-whites. So there were many activists and freedom fighters, you can say, who fought for a very, very long time to get rid of this system. And once they successfully got rid or started to get rid of the system, the first pure democratic election that they had resulted in Nelson Mandela being elected the president of South Africa, the first black president. So you need to understand why this is such an important moment in history. And in his speech, he talks about how, this is a culmination of the efforts of so many people who fought long and hard, okay? And the fact that when he realized that he is not free, when he realized that his brothers and sisters are not free, those who look like him, have the same skin color, are not free, is when he sacrificed his own personal life, and this cause meant everything to him. So he dedicated his life to this cause. Okay, so never, never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by another. That was the promise, that this is the time for equality and acceptance. All right, so here's our first question. Why did such a large number of international leaders attend the inauguration? What did it signify the triumph of? So like we just discussed, this was a very historic moment in history, because this very discriminatory system that was in place was finally eradicated, and the inauguration of a new non-racial government was a very, very important moment. The fact that a black president was being elected was a very, very important moment, which is why so many international leaders attended this event. Okay. जब generally भी countries में there's a new president, there's a new prime minister, generally also for diplomatic reasons leaders visit. But ये बहुत ज़्यादा important event था because it signified a systemic change in that country. Okay, in the victory of equality, as Nikhil is pointing out. All right. So it signified the triumph of kya? The second part of the question. So it signified the triumph of justice, of peace, and of human dignity. All right. Okay. What does Mandela mean when he says he's simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before him? The meaning of this, like I just explained, is कि जो संघर्ष होता है, जो revolution होता है, जो freedom fight होती है, वो एक इंसान की मेहनत से नहीं होती, वो काफ़ी लोगों के साथ आने से और बहुत सालों तक struggle करने से मिलती है. And you know even our freedom struggle, the freedom struggle of India is a testament to this, because so many people, so many freedom fighters fought long and hard, and many of them died before they could actually see a free country. So same thing goes here. A lot of activists dedicated their entire lives and worked very, very hard, but never really got to see the outcome of what they struggled for, right? So what Mandela meant when he said this is that the fact that a black president has now been elected is not, it doesn't say as much about me as it does about all the other people who were involved in the who were involved in the struggle to get rid of this racial system, okay, racist system. So he was also pained that he could not thank them and that they could not see that what their sacrifices had resulted in. Okay. Now, would you agree that the depths of oppression create heights of character? How does Mandela illustrate this? Can you add your own examples to this argument? So again, here you can disagree, but it logically makes sense to agree. Nelson Mandela has said this, and you have to give your own reasons as to why you agree. So, depths of oppression create heights of character. ठीक है, डेप्थ्स ऑफ ऑपरेशन मतलब इतना ऑपरेशन कोई आपको इतना दबा के रखता है कि आपके पास कुछ करने की फ्रीडम ना हो, कोई बेसिक ह्यूमन राइट्स ना हो. डज दैट क्रिएट हाइट्स ऑफ कैरेक्टर? सो द रीजन वाई नेल्सन मंडेला सेज दिस एंड द थॉट प्रोसेस बिहाइंड दिस, आप खुद की लाइफ में सोच के देखो, जब आपको बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रगल करना पड़ता है, दैट यू नो समटाइम्स इम्प्रूव्स योर कैरेक्टर. Correct? It can make you mentally strong, as Nikhil is saying. Definitely, it can instill discipline in you. It can make you value the good things that you have. And all of these things, what do? They bring out the heights of your character, right? So, ऐसे आपके पास whatever examples you have, you give me in the chat. It molds a person, makes you aware of how strong you are. Also, it can also tell you about your strength. The fact that you deal with such a negative or a bad situation, the fact that you've dealt with it makes you believe that you are a very, very strong person, right? So, depths of oppression does create heights of character. ठीक है? And how does Mandela illustrate this? He talks about the decades of brutality and oppression that his people had to go through, and because of all of this, the courage and valor with which they fought is a testament to how depths of oppression can create heights of character. Yeah. So some people who probably would have never gone out of their way to stand up for someone else did it once they were inflicted in the same way, once they had to face depths of oppression themselves. ठीक है? All right. So how did Mandela's understanding of freedom change with age and experience? So he talks about this very systematically in the chapter. He says कि जब मैं छोटा था तब मेरे लिए freedom क्या होती थी कि मैंने बाहर जाके खेल लिया और मेरे को जो करना था I wanted to go play a little bit outside my house, spend my free time doing things that I like. I could do all of that, so I thought I was free. As long as I was obeying my father, I thought I was free. ठीक है. और बचपन में ज़्यादा चीज़ें नहीं चाहिए होती है. बड़े होते हुए रियलाइज होता है कि डू यू रियली हैव फ्रीडम इन द वर्ल्ड आउटसाइड और नॉट. अपने घर में तो हमें लगता है कि मम्मी पापा के साथ सब अच्छा चल रहा है तो हमारे पास फ्रीडम है. इट्स लेटर ऑन व्हेन यू स्टेप इनटू द रियल वर्ल्ड, व्हेन यू आर नॉट अलाउड टू वोट, when you're not allowed to go to certain places because blacks are not allowed there, when you're not given certain jobs because of the color of your skin, when you face such discrimination, that's when you realize you're not free. And then when you think about having a family of your own and you realize that your children will go through the same thing, that's when you realize that you are not free. ठीक है. We all have rights. We live in a democracy. कल को आप अपने घर से बाहर जाओगे, आप किसी रेस्टोरेंट में खाना खाने जा रहे हो और आपको कोई बोल देगा कि नहीं आप नहीं आ सकते क्योंकि आप ऐसे दिखते हो. That is discrimination. We don't face it because we live in a free country. But back when we also didn't, then this used to happen. Correct? So that is how growing up changed his understanding of freedom. Okay? Now next, how did Mandela's hunger for freedom change his life? So as he started realizing that he's not free, he didn't want the normal things that everybody wants anymore. He did not want a family. He did not just want, to be married with kids because he realized that his family could never be free. And, he went from being a reserved or even a scared person to someone who's very headstrong, okay? And he went from being somebody who was who used to follow the law to the T to someone who realized that the laws themselves are rigged. The system is rigged, so why should I follow the laws? ठीक है? He was a law-abiding attorney, but then he realized that the laws are created in such a discriminatory way that why should I not break the laws, right? So these are the shifts that he had, and he explains them. Yes. Very good, Madhura. Transformed him from a frightened man to a bold man. Okay, so these are the points that you can incorporate over here. Next, 2 stories about flying, his first flight. Very cute story about a seagull struggling to fly because he's very, very scared. He sees his mother, he sees his siblings going around flying, but he's not able to until he gets maddened by hunger. He really wants to eat, very, very hungry, and that prompts him to take his first flight. And as soon as he does, he realizes that this wasn't as bad as he thought it would be. ठीक है? Easy. So why was the young seagull afraid to fly? Do you think all young birds are afraid to make their first flight, or are some birds more timid than others? Do you think a human baby also finds it a challenge to take its first steps? So of course, here you can justify your answer any way you want, but we know that the seagull was afraid to fly because it was his first flight. And we know from experience that the first time we try to do something, we are more scared of it. Okay? Once we've already experienced it, तो हमें पता है कि कैसे होता है. तो हमें डर नहीं लगता है. लेकिन पहली बारी में हमेशा थोड़ा सा डर लगता है. Yeah, I was afraid to ride my bicycle for the first time, Nikhil is saying. Correct. So you can give your own experiences in this answer. You can also, do you think a human baby finds it a challenge today? Of course. क्योंकि जब human baby भी चलना शुरू करता है तो गिरता तो है चलते चलते. And when you fall, you feel pain. So that pain can also cause fear. मैं गिरूंगा तो मुझे दर्द होगी. Right? So yes, Aditi, you can add many thoughtful lines in this. This is entirely up to you. As long as you structure it logically, give reasons, and write in, 90% correct English. Even if you make small errors here and there, that's okay. Alright, so you're all giving your own personal responses in the chat. Very good. That's what we're looking for. So Hamda was scared cooking for the first time. Makes sense. The first time I made a roti, I burnt it. So great. Moving on to the second one. The sight of the food maddened him. What does this suggest? What compelled the young seagull to finally fly? So it was hunger that compelled the young seagull to finally fly. Right? पहले अपने siblings को देख के वो नहीं माना. अपने पेरेंट्स को देख के वो नहीं माना, पर जब भूख इतनी ज़्यादा लगी कि कंट्रोल नहीं हो रहा था, he got desperate. That's when he chose to fly. Okay, so hunger overpowered the fear. जो डर था उससे ज़्यादा भूख थी, ठीक है? Yeah, hunger overpowers, you can say. He didn't overcome his fear until he actually was able to, until he realized that he's able to fly. But the hunger was so strong that he didn't care as much about the fear anymore. He just wanted food, right? So that became a motivator for him to fly. Now, they were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. Why did the seagull's father and mother threaten him and cajole him to fly? So the seagull's mother and father knew that, maybe हर छोटे seagull को डर लगता है. They had other children also, right? So they probably knew. So they knew that he is scared to fly. And despite seeing his brothers and sisters fly, that also didn't give him the courage that he needed to actually take his first flight. So that is when they started calling him shrilly and scolding him. And the mother and father probably knew that the seagull will be able to fly once he gets really, really hungry. तो मम्मी पापा easily खाना पकड़ के लाके उसको दे सकते थे. पर अगर वो दे देते तो क्या वो उड़ता? वो नहीं उड़ता, right? So on purpose, they didn't give him food so that he would get so hungry and that would lead him to fly. ठीक है? As Nikhil is saying, the beckoning had a hidden agenda or a result behind it. Okay, they were not being cruel to him. They knew ki this is the only way we can get him to overcome his fear. Now again, here's a subjective question. We won't spend time discussing it because we have a lot to cover, but I'll just give you a thought process of how you can answer this. So if you had a similar experience where your parents encouraged you to do something that you were too scared to do, isme just think about sometimes, like riding a bicycle is one. I always used to ask my father to hold it from the back while I was riding so that I don't fall. And one day he let go without telling me. And I got so scared at first, but then I realized that I could ride it on my own. Okay? So, is type ke experiences, if you have, you can share. And then, based on your discussion of that previous question, was your success guaranteed? Or was it important for you to try regardless of the possibility of failure? So, in the examples that you think of, also think about whether or not you knew that you would succeed, or was it just for the experience. Okay, so we'll skip over these for now. Maybe if we have time in the end we can come back because we have a lot to cover. We've only reached chapter 3. Okay, so now 2 stories about flying. The second one is the black aeroplane. So I'll take the risk. What is the risk? Why does the narrator take it? So I'm not, because we are a little short on time today, I won't go over the summary. You will understand the story through the answers that we discussed. Okay? So the risk that the narrator was taking is he decided that he would fly through the dark clouds, the black clouds that were in front of him, because he really wanted to make it back home on time. And the reason why he wanted to make it back home was because he wanted to enjoy time with his family and have a nice English breakfast, right? So the risk, as Tanishq has very correctly pointed out, was to enter into the storm. And the reason why he took it was because he wanted to make it home to his family. Alright, the second question now is, describe the narrator's experience as he flew the aeroplane into the storm. So as he flew into the storm, suddenly everything went black. He couldn't see anything. It was so dark. Okay, and it was impossible to see anything outside. And after that, the plane also started jumping and twisting in the air because it was a storm, right? So okay, so Nikhil is describing it in one word. He's saying terrible. But we have a very visual description of everything that happened. So we can incorporate that in the answer. Okay. So we can say that he couldn't see anything. It got really dark. His plane jumped and twisted in the air. His compass stopped working. He lost contact with the control room. Okay, and he was afraid as there was limited fuel. Very good, correct. So all of these points you can add. Okay, and then what happened, the very important thing that happened in the story was he suddenly saw another plane. Okay, and then he saw a pilot in there who gestured him to follow him, and he started following that pilot. He saw that he didn't have enough fuel and he wanted to make it to safety, so he took the call to follow that pilot. Okay, this is what happened. Now, why does the narrator say, I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota? So the old Dakota was a plane that he was flying, and he was not afraid to walk away from it because he had such a bad experience with it. He almost died in that plane, correct? That is why he was not sorry to walk away from it. What made the woman in the control center look at the narrator strangely? Very easy answer. The reason why she looked at him strangely was because he said he wanted to thank the other pilot who helped him, but in reality, was there another pilot? No, the lady could not see any other pilot or any other plane in her radar, and she was wondering why this man, which pilot is this man talking about? Okay? Now, again, this is a subjective question. Who do you think helped the narrator? Could be anything. You could say it was a ghost. It was some other pilot who perhaps lost his life in the storm and wanted to help another pilot so that he doesn't. It was probably his own self. He himself, yes, as Tanishq is saying. Okay? It was his own confidence. So it was sort of a symbol of his own confidence that helped him. Right? So any answer you give, as long as you justify it, it's good to go. All right, now we've reached from the diary of Anne Frank, a very, very important book, autobiography of a young Jewish girl who later lost her life in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. Okay, so was Anne right when she said that the world would not be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old? Of course not. The fact that we're reading this book to this day, and it continues to be such an important piece of work that tells us so much about the history of that time. Of course, she was not right when she said that nobody would be interested in it. Everybody is still very much interested in the musings of a 13-year-old girl. Okay, it was translated from the original language into every imaginable language. Okay, and it's one of the most widely read books in the world. Now, there are some examples of diary or journal entries in the Before You Read section. Now, if you go through your Before You Read section, you will find, they're not all diary entries. One is a log, you'll have a memoir. Okay, now what makes her diary entry different and distinct? First of all, it was written in Dutch. Secondly, she named her diary. So her diary was not just some instrument that she wrote in. It was her friend. She considered her diary as a friend, and everything that she was writing in her diary was her way of communicating with her friend. That was Kitty, her diary. Okay? Correct, Kitty. So that's what makes it so different. All right. Why does Anne need to give a brief sketch about her family? Does she treat Kitty as an insider or an outsider? Of course, she treats Kitty as an insider. She says this multiple times that paper has more patience than humans and they make better friends. Okay, so and because she felt lonely, she felt like there was no one in her life that was so close to her who would understand all her thoughts and emotions. She made Kitty, her diary, her friend. So obviously Kitty knew her deepest, darkest thoughts, knew everything about her, so was definitely an insider. But then why did Anne feel the need to give a brief sketch of her family? It's because she sort of had this inkling that what if somebody else reads this, they will have no context, they would understand nothing about what I'm saying. So if this diary lands in somebody else's hands, then they would need a brief sketch of her family. Okay? Okay. Yes, Tanishq, what is your doubt? While you ask me a doubt, let's move on. And yes, all of you are giving very valid points. Now, how does Anne feel about her father, grandmother, Mrs. Cuperus and Mr. Keesing? what do these tell you about her? So she obviously feels positive feelings about all of them, maybe a little not so much about Mr. Keesing, who kept giving her homework for being too talkative, but throughout she talks of her father as the most adorable father she had ever seen. She talks about her grandmother fondly and talks about how she still misses her a lot after her death. She talks about Mrs. Cuperus, who was her headmistress in her Montessori school, and how she cried when she had to leave because she bonded with her so well. And she talks about Mr. Keesing, about how she annoyed him way too much because she used to talk a lot in class, and how he kept giving her essays to write about this. So, what does this tell you about Anne's personality? She mixes very well with people. She's able to form close bonds, and even Mr. Keesing, who was annoyed by the fact that she kept talking, was so impressed by the arguments that she gave in her essays, right? So even Mr. Keesing, who had every reason to be angry with her, was not angry with her, which told us about her really smart mind and loving personality. All right. So what does Anne write in her first essay? So her first essay is A Chatterbox. That's the title. Devika, Mr. Keesing is her maths teacher, and she kept talking in maths class. So he kept giving her, his way of punishing her was to give her essays to write. So the first essay was on the title of the first essay that he'd given her, the topic was A Chatterbox. And in a chatterbox, she came up with very convincing arguments that, this is our age to talk. And also my mother is very talkative. So it's very hard not to get rid of inherited traits. Okay, so she gave very convincing arguments, and even Mr. Keesing was very amused by the kind of arguments that she gave, right? Now, Anne says teachers are most unpredictable. Is Mr. Keesing unpredictable? How? So, Anne says that all teachers were unpredictable because you never knew when even despite of how you've done in your exams, you wouldn't know if you pass or fail because teachers are unpredictable. But then she goes ahead, we have to justify whether or not Mr. Keesing is unpredictable. So we can say that Mr. Keesing is unpredictable because first he gets angry when Anne talks in class, but the extent of his punishment is just to make her write an essay. And even after she writes an essay and justifies why she talks a lot, Mr. Keesing only gets amused. Okay? He doesn't get angry. So even Mr. Keesing is unpredictable. All right, now we've reached chapter 5, which is 100 dresses. Okay, let's quickly go through it. Now this is about Wanda Petrowski, who's a Polish immigrant and is studying in America and is being bullied in school, right? So how is Wanda seen as different by the other girls? How do they treat her? So the other girls don't treat her well, and they make fun. Yes, Kritika Shetty, an incorrigible chatterbox was the second essay. An incorrigible means someone who cannot be fixed. Okay, someone who doesn't change. So she was a chatterbox and she got scolded for it, but yet she is a chatterbox, so she's incorrigible. Okay, so she, Wanda always came to school alone, went back home alone, didn't have a lot of friends, wore a really faded, old, worn out dress that didn't even fit her properly, and the other girls all teased her and made fun of her, especially Peggy, who even had a game to irritate Wanda. Yeah. So the other girls did not treat her well because of the way she looked, because she was different, her name was different. Then that's the reason why you bully people, right? Because they're not the same as you don't understand them, and that's not a very good thing to do at all. Okay? So then, how does Wanda feel about the dresses game? Why does she say that she has 100 dresses? So Wanda doesn't show any feelings while playing the dresses game, but the reason, you can speculate why she says she has 100 dresses. Maybe it's to fight back. It's her way of fighting back. It's her way of protecting her own self, and maybe she's lying. Maybe she's already drawn those 100 dresses, and she's referring to those, saying that I have those 100 dresses. So however you want to justify this, you can, because this is based on speculation. Okay, Now, why does Maddie stand by and not do anything? How is she different from Peggy? Was Peggy's friendship important to Maddie? So this is a rather long answer. Okay, and then I think we can skip because we're very short on time. Okay, this is also most likely not a part of your syllabus, so let's skip through it. If by chance it's still coming in your midterms, we will go back and go through any doubts that you have regarding this. But yes, you already know, okay, it is for sure deleted. In that case, we will not waste time on it anymore. Let's go to Footprints Without Feet very quickly. A Triumph of Surgery. This is a story about a little dog called Tricky, who is very, very pampered, and because of all the pampering, he gets very, very unhealthy, and his owner Mrs. Pumphrey wants him to get surgery, but the doctor knows that it's not surgery that Tricky needs. Tricky just needs a diet. Tricky just needs to play more and he will be fine. Okay, but does he ever tell Mrs. Pumphrey that surgery was not done? No, he never tells Mrs. Pumphrey. So Mrs. Pumphrey keeps thinking that it was actually surgery that saved Tricky. Yes, Devika, she is rich. Yes, Aditya, Dr. Harriet. So what kind of a person do you think the narrator, a veterinary surgeon, is? Would you say he's a tactful as well as full of common sense? So 100% yes, he is full of common sense. He looks at Tricky and he straight away knows what the problem is, what is wrong with her, and what needs to be done in order to fix Tricky. ठीक है? And is he tactful? हाँ, मौके का फायदा उठाते हैं ना डॉक्टर हैरियट जब when Tricky is recovering, when Tricky so-called recovering after his surgery, Mrs. Pumphrey gets very, very worried and she sends a lot of eggs, wine, brandy in order to take care of Tricky. And what does Dr. Harriet do? He decides to eat all of that and drink all of that and let Tricky... And these things are bad for Tricky anyway, right? These are the things that led to Tricky becoming unhealthy and sick. So, मौके का फायदा उठा के Dr. Harriet was eating all of those luxurious things that were coming for Tricky. Not greedy. We wouldn't say he was greedy. He was, and because the doctor also knew, right? Doctor को पता था कि समझाने में भी शायद समझ नहीं आएगा. Mrs. Pumphrey would say नहीं मेरे पास बहुत पैसा है, मेरा पैसा ले लो, इसकी सर्जरी करो, इसको ठीक करो. उनको शायद Mrs. Pumphrey को समझाने में भी समझ नहीं आएगा कि that's not what the problem is. Sometimes too much of a good thing also becomes bad. ठीक है? And because you're pampering him so much, feeding him so much, that's affecting his health negatively. Okay? Alright. Do you think Tricky was happy to go home? Yes, Tricky was happy to go home. He very excitedly jumped out of the doctor's lap and went right to Mrs. Pumphrey. He obviously loved Mrs. Pumphrey, right? It's not that he didn't. And anyway, he was being pampered. He enjoyed that. He just didn't know that that was bad for his health. Yeah, Kritika, he did get tempted, but he was not a bad person, so he would not have kept Tricky permanently. Yes. You have doubts, please ask. Tanishq, Mrs. Pumphrey is a real name. It exists. But the choice of using it here in the story, you can make that connection. Anuradha, you can ask your question as well. Meanwhile, we will discuss. Devika, yes, the doctor gave the dog so many friends, such a fun environment to play in, so why not? Why would the dog not love the doctor? But he spent so many years of his life with his owner, right? So obviously he would want to go back to Mrs. Pumphrey. Okay, so next, do you think this is a real life episode or mere fiction? Or is it a mixture of both? Now this is up to you to answer. Okay, fiction is something that's not real. Nikhil, fiction is जो कहानियाँ हम खुद से बनाते हैं जो असली नहीं होती है. Okay, so you can say this could be a real life episode in that there are many people who pamper their dogs to the extent that you know they get very very unhealthy. उनको खाना ही खिलाते रहते, walk पे नहीं लेके जाते और फिर वो इतने अनहेल्दी हो जाते कि वो चल भी नहीं पाते. ऐसे आपने भी देखे होंगे कुत्ते, राइट? सो दिस इज बेस्ड इन रियल लाइफ. बट इसमें फिक्शन ये हो सकता है कि ट्रिकी इतनी जल्दी ठीक कैसे हो गया, हाउ डिड ट्रिकी रिकवर सो फास्ट, बिकॉज इन रियलिटी यू नो इट टेक्स अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम टू फिक्स योर हेल्थ, करेक्ट? So it could be both. Now we are only going to go through one question of the remaining chapters, and we'll do it quickly. So here there's a hint also. What are Hari Singh's reactions to the prospect of receiving an education? Do they change over time? What makes him return to Anil? So very simple answer. The first the first time around, Hari Singh thinks that getting an education will help him con people better. तो अगर I'm able to read and write and all of that, तो मुझे चोरी करने में मदद मिल जाएगी. I'll become a better thief. Okay? And over time he realizes कि चोरी में, you know, it's such a, first of all, it didn't sit well with his conscience, and he realized that, you know, and it's given to you over here. It was a simple matter to steal, and sometimes just as simple to be caught. But to be a really big man, a clever and respected man, was something else. So he realized over time that he needs a more respectable life, which chori is not going to give him, being a thief is not going to give him, and that's when he valued education to get a more respectable life. First he wanted to use education to steal better, then he realized he wants to use education to make a better life for himself. Okay? All right. Now quickly, why does Anil not go to the police? Because Anil, even though he knew the notes were wet, so Anil realized कि इसने चोरी करने की कोशिश तो की थी, but he doesn't go to the police because Hari Singh comes back, right? And Anil realized that Hari Singh also realized his mistake. He regretted what he did and he came back. And Anil wanted to give him a chance to become a better person. Okay? So Adarsh Rubin, the reason why Anil didn't go to the police is because Hari Singh को चोरी करके भागनी होती तो वो चोरी करके भाग जाता. फिर अनिल पुलिस के पास चला जाता कि ये चोरी करके भाग गया, लेकिन वो चोरी करके भागा नहीं, वो चोरी करके वापस आ गया और गलती करके जो वो गलती रियलाइज करके उसको रिग्रेट करता है. दैट इज व्हेन यू नो दैट दैट पर्सन वांट्स टू चेंज. And because Anil knew that Hari Singh could change and wanted to become a better person, that's why he didn't hand him over to the police. Okay, very quickly, 2 more questions to go. This is from the Midnight Visitor. Oswald did not fit any description of a secret agent Fowler had ever read. So this is a subjective one. You can go through this in your own time. So you can just list out or think about the kind of secret agents that you've seen in movies and compare Oswald with them. ठीक है? James Bond type के secret agents होते हैं and then there's Oswald. Okay, so you can compare those 2 descriptions. Okay? Now, how does Oswald manage to make Max believe that there is a balcony? वो शुरू से ही बार बार ये बोल रहा होता है कि अरे यार ये लोग बालकनी नहीं बंद करते, इसीलिए बार बार मेरे रूम में लोग घुस के आ जाते हैं. Okay, so he gave him a full description that, you know, my room used to be a part of a bigger room, the balcony is a part of that room. Ever since they divided the 2 rooms, the balcony still connects to my window, and through that window lots of people enter my room. All of this was a big fat lie. But because he told it so convincingly, Max 100% believed him. So the details that he gave, the confidence in his voice, his good acting, all of this made Max believe. Okay, now last chapter. We'll go through a question here. I think we can go through the last question. The other 2 again a little subjective. You will be able to answer them. We only have time for 1 more question, so let's quickly go over this. Horace Danby was good and respectable but not completely honest. Why do you think this description is apt for Horace? Why can't he be categorized as a typical thief? Okay, so he was good and respectable because Horace Danby का चोरी करने का agenda क्या था? His life did not depend on it. He did not steal to live a luxurious life. He had one interest, which was to buy rare and expensive books, and in order to do that, he used to steal. तो सिर्फ rare and expensive books खरीदने के लिए Horace चोरी करता था. No other reason. Correct? And for most part of the year, he didn't do anything bad. He just had to steal from one safe that would take care of his needs for a good amount of time. So his livelihood, everything else, it's so easy to get carried away. You can easily say that, I'm going to, now that I can steal, I'll steal, and then I'll buy a better car, I'll buy a better house, I'll get richer. He didn't do any of that. He just knew he wanted rare and expensive books, and he stole only that much that was necessary to do that. Okay? And so why can't he be these are the reasons why he can't be categorized as a typical thief. Okay? And lastly, Horace Danby was a meticulous planner, but still he faltered. Where did he go wrong? He planned everything since the beginning. He knew what the house was like. He knew that the people are going to be gone. He knew that he had to make friends with the dog in order to break into the house. इतनी सारी planning करके last में एक लेडी ने आके उसका बेवकूफ बना दिया. That's where he faltered. He did not for 1 second think that why is this lady, she doesn't look like the lady of the house, why is she here before time, why does she not remember the passcode of her own safe, and him leaving his fingerprints all over the safe. All of these issues he did not see, and that's where he faltered and ended up in jail. All right. Correct. So we have very quickly covered all the chapters. We had to skip past a little question, so maybe next time we'll make up for it. No worries there. And no mentee today, but just a few reminders as always. Do enroll for free for ANTHE. You can get a 100% scholarship, an All India rank, and you can win a trip to NASA. As always, join the Telegram channel if you haven't. And we've got you covered, so like, subscribe and press the bell icon. Check out BYJU'S classes with the 2-teacher advantage. All trial classes links are in the description box. So those of you who haven't checked them out yet, please do that. Okay? So dynamic gamings, even though we did skip over 100 lessons, we still address 2 questions. So you will be good, don't worry. You know the lesson, don't stress out about it at all. Okay? Chalo, bye. Have a good evening.